In the last section, we spoke a little bit about how we're going to implement this cards program inside of our application. We're going to define a new special type inside of our application called the deck type. The deck type is essentially the same thing as a slice of string, but because we are making this extra type, it gives us the ability to create a bunch of custom functions that only work with that deck type. So let's now change back over to our code editor and start putting this new deck type together. So back inside of the deck.go file, I'm going to first start off by creating a comment that's going to kind of guide us and kind of describe what we are trying to do. So I'm going to write a comment that says, create a new type of deck, which is a slice of strings. And then right underneath that, we're going to create this new type. So we're going to say type deck is kind of a slice or a subclass, or kind of extends all the behavior of a slice of string. Now, when I just said extends and subclass, those are not terms that we actually use inside of Go. That's just if you're coming from an object-oriented kind of background, that's kind of a useful way of thinking about how these two things relate together. So again, if you're coming from an object-oriented programming background, you can kind of think of this statement right here as saying this new deck type that we are creating kind of extends or borrows all the behavior of a slice of string. So now that we've declared this new type inside of our application, we can go back through all the code that we've already written, and anywhere that we have said that we have created a slice of type string, we can replace it with this new deck type. So again, what we're doing right here is we are saying there's a new thing called a deck. It is equal to, like, all the same behavior as a slice of string. So I'm now going to go back to our main.go file. You'll notice that on the first line inside of our main function, we had created a slice of string. So now that we've set up that relationship between the deck type and slice of string, we can replace this statement right here with just deck, like so. And I'm going to make sure that I save both files here. When I do, I'm going to get code validation, and it looks like everything is working out okay. So again, when we replace this with deck right here, you can imagine this statement right here as saying, hey, these two things are 100% equal. They're totally equal. All right, now just to prove to you that this works out the way we expect and that it's still valid code, let's try running our application again and seeing what happens. So I'm going to flip back over to the terminal. I'm going to make sure I'm inside of my cards directory. Now, inside of here, we now have two separate Go files that we want to make sure are included when we execute, compile, and run our program. So previously we had said go run main.go, but now when we execute our program, we also want to make sure that this deck.go file is included as well. So we're going to say go run main.go, and we're going to put a space and then also say deck.go. So take these two files, compile them, and run the result. So now we'll run it, and we still get the printout on the screen. So it looks like replacing that string slice with the deck type is definitely working out a-okay at this point. Okay, so at this point, hey, things are working out, but I'm sure you're kind of sitting there thinking, what is the point of this right here? Like, why are we creating this deck thing? So we're now going to kind of do a little bit of a pivot, and I'm going to give you a very clear example of exactly why we added this code in. All right. So at this point, back inside of our main.go file, over here, we wrote out a little bit of code to loop through all of the cards inside of our cards variable right here and print out the value in every single one. So I'm going to set a little goal for us. I'm going to say that I want to create a new function that belongs to this deck type. And whenever we call that function, we should print out each individual card inside of the deck. So once we write out this code, I think it's going to become a little bit more clear why we created this type right here. Now, as usual, we're going to write out the code first, and then we'll talk about exactly what it's doing, and we'll talk about the syntax around it. So underneath our type declaration right here, we're going to create a new function, and we're going to call it print. The purpose of this function is going to be to loop through our deck of cards and print out the value of every single card, just like how we were doing right here. Okay, so let's throw down the code for this. We're going to say func, and then this is going to be really weird. We're not going to put the name of the function. Instead, we're going to place what is referred to as a receiver. So we're going to say func d dec inside of a set of parentheses like so. We'll then say print. We'll put our curly braces. And then inside of here, we'll put down the same logic we had before to loop over our list of cards and print them out. So we'll say for I and card inside of range. And then we're going to say D here. Again, we'll talk about why we're using this D thing in just a second. And then we'll print out the value of each card by saying fmt.println and then card. And you know what, let's print out the index too. Okay, so now one last step. We'll flip back over to the main.go file and call this function rather than that kind of built-in loop we have over there. So back inside of main.go, I'm going to delete the for loop. And now here's the weird part. We're going to say cards.print. Okay, so let's just run our code right now, and then we'll get a sense of whether or not it works, and we'll figure out kind of what's going on behind the scenes. So I'm going to flip back over to the terminal, and again we'll run main go, and also include dec.go as well. And so when I do, we still get out the same log statement that we had before. So clearly something right happened here, like something good happened. However, I want to make sure you've got a really strong feeling of what just happened. So let's take a quick break. We're going to come back in the next section and we're going to really dive down and drill into the code that we just put together. So quick break and I'll see you in just a second.